ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति भूरिदा जना. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year's to everyone. We are reading from the chapter of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Master in M. It is Friday, September 7th, 1883, and we're on page 285. Sri Ramakrishna, is Sunday, September 9th, 1883, and Sri Ramakrishna was in the room with Rakal, M, and Ratan. Ratan was somebody who worked in Jadu Malik's garden house, who was very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, and they were talking about some theft that took place before that. Okay. So Sri Ramakrishna is speaking. There was once a goldsmith whose tongue suddenly turned up and stuck to his palate. He looked like a man in samadhi. He became completely inert and remained so a long time. People came to worship him. After several years, his tongue suddenly returned to its natural position and he became conscious of things as before. So he went back to his work as a goldsmith. All laugh. These are physical things and have nothing to do with God. There was a man who knew 82 postures and talked big about yoga samadhi, but inwardly he was drawn to women in gold. Once he found a banknote worth several thousand rupees. He could not resist the temptation and swallowed it, thinking he would get it out somehow later on. The note was got out of him all right, but he was sent to jail for 3 years. In my guilelessness, I used to think that the man had made great spiritual progress. Really, I say it upon my word. Now, this is interesting because we know that Sri Ramakrishna had this ability to judge people, and he could look inside their hearts and their minds and know everything that was going on. Huh? Now we have a simple case where he says, I was so guileless that I took this man to be a great spiritual soul. So sometimes he was back in that balakavat, huh? Just in that mood of a child where he's not thinking too much about things, very innocent and guileless. Other times he has that vision. So because people were asking, we were all wondering about the Bhavanat, how Thakur could praise him so highly, and some others also. And then afterwards, that they seem to be a disappointment to people, at least from our point of view, that way. So he had a human mind, but he had this uh, spiritual insight that human ordinary people don't have. A combination is very hard to understand. Huh? How sometimes he could just, like here, he says, really, mighty Vochi, really upon my word, that I took him to be a great soul, and he was just a fake. So sometimes we see just that simplicity and guilelessness, and other times that sharp vision to be able to know exactly what a person is thinking, what their present and past and future are, and everything else. It's funny, he always spoke about that, the avatar being this combination of the human and divine. That the avatar has a human body, has a human mind, and the human emotions and everything else, and at the same time, uh, they represent a completely different class of individual. Mahindra Pal of Sinti once gave Ramlal 5 rupees. Ramlal told me about it after he had gone. I asked him what the gift was for, and Ramlal said that it was meant for me. I thought it might enable me to pay off some of my debt for milk. He was a priest in the Kali temple, and I think he got 7 rupees a month, something like that. Some of it he kept aside. We find out later for Holy Mother, and if he needed anything extra, it had to be paid for somehow. So he had a little bit of debt. So even he wasn't completely free of having to worry about these things a little bit. I thought it might enable me to pay off some of my debt for milk. That night I went to bed, and if you will believe me, I suddenly woke up with a pain. I felt as if a cat were scratching inside my chest. He used to get these sensations. Sometimes when he was longing for God, it was like this wet towel being dried when we squeezed it and everything. And when it was something like this, it would be like the clawing of a cat. It's a terrible thing. I at once went to Ramlal and asked him, "For whom did Mahendra give this money? Was it for your aunt?" That means Holy Mother. He never referred to Holy Mother by her name. That this was a tradition that it was held to be a little bit disrespectful to use the actual name for people that we have great respect for. Yeah. So Totopuri, he never used the name Totopuri. It was always Nangta, the naked one. And for Holy Mother, always Ramlal's aunt. And so this one way that shows this great regard he had for Holy Mother. For whom did Mahendra give this money? Was it for your aunt? No, said Ramlal. It is meant for you. I said to him, go and return the money at once, or I shall have no peace of mind. Ramlal returned the money early in the morning, and I felt relieved. This was something that was a literal manifestation of a mood. This aparigraha, there were certain things that Thakur had, that he couldn't touch money, that he couldn't save anything, that he couldn't worry about the future, different things like that, that manifested in his physical body even. So we know with money, if he touched it, that it would be like this, the type of fish, this horned stinging fish, something like that. What is it called? Like this Portuguese man of war, they have in Florida sometimes, blowfish, something. Anyhow, it was very painful type of stingy thing. So these things would actually happen to him, physical things. And there's so many instances where if he took something unknowingly, somebody gave him something for later, and without thinking, he put it in his pocket and started walking, and he would start going here and there, and without knowing why or how, he would find himself walking towards the Ganges, ready to drown himself. And then he said, "What is happening to me?" Then he would remember that he'd taken something, and then so he would throw it away or give it back, something like that. So this is an instance where it shows that he's not fully dependent on the Divine Mother. If he's saving something for the future, if he's worried about what will happen, to pay off a debt, anything like that. So it wasn't just that he took this resolve in his mind that he wouldn't do these things. If he did it even unconsciously, the body would react. This thing with money, Swami Narendra, he tested him. He put a little coin under his mat on his bed, and to see what would happen, Thakur said, "Now, what is this?" Immediately he felt it, and he looked and saw, "Oh, you're testing me, huh?" So it's very odd. We don't find this phenomenon, and I don't know about it in anybody other than Sri Ramakrishna. How these things happen so tangibly and literally in his life, with the physical reaction to things that we normally take to be a mental reaction. Okay, I took it by mistake. I feel bad, something, but he actually, whole body would have some reaction to it. Once a rich man came here and said to me, "Sir, you must do something so that I may win my lawsuit. I've heard of your reputation, and so I have come here. My dear sir, I said to him, you've made a mistake. I am not the person you were looking for. Achalananda is your man. This Swami Achalananda, we met him a couple of sessions ago. There was a little description of him. He was a married man with a family, children and everything, and decided that he wanted to become a sadhu, and wasn't so honest, and earned money by professing to cure people and do rituals and tantric things and everything. So Thakur knew him. He would come and visit sometime. They had some type of relationship, but Thakur knew that the man was a little bit of a cheat, that he wasn't so genuine. And so if anybody came, because there was a reputation that sadhus could heal people and that they could practice magical things, and you could win your lawsuits and all of that. And of course, Thakur couldn't even imagine these things, so he would always send them to Achalananda. A true devotee of God does not care for such things as wealth or health. Now, what about health? Do we not care about health? We read so many times that unless the body is in good physical shape, how can we practice meditation and everything else? It means we shouldn't be overly obsessed with it. That we do whatever we have to try to remain healthy, and if we're not healthy, then we accept it. This is our karma, however we understand it. We shouldn't be overly concerned. Money, we don't want to find ourselves out on the street. We have to be sensible. But to just try to accumulate money or have that as the goal of life, then we're missing the whole point. A true devotee of God does not care for such things as wealth or health. He thinks, why should I practice spiritual austerities for creature comforts, money or name and fame? These are all impermanent. They last only a day or two. This really is a question of priorities in life. Sometimes we just lose our perspective on things, and constantly worry about our situation in life, and what will happen with this and what will happen with that, and we forget this life is going to go just like that. And whatever we have, we buy some new thing, we get a new car and everything, we take such good care of it, we forget 5 or 10 years it's going to be dented and old, and we won't care for it. We can't wait to get rid of it. The same thing was even with his body, the same thing. So we have to have a different perspective in spiritual life, that there's a goal that has nothing to do with any of these things. These things are all ephemeral. They occupy the mind. They make us attached to things. They make us worry about things. They give us anxiety, and it's impossible to practice spiritual life. They're all signs of not having the ultimate goal, knowing what the goal in life is, and of not having a spirit of dependence on God. We have this real dependence on God. We don't worry about the future. We do what's necessary to try to eliminate, all the possible tragedies that'll take place and everything. But other than that, whatever comes, we accept, and we accept it as will of God or the grace of God, whatever it is, and we're happy, we're content. Otherwise, there's no contentment. There's no contentment in life when the mind is all busy and concerned about our situation, our financial situation, health situation, social situation, all of these things. These are all just so fleeting. And we look back at how we worried about things in the past and how everything took care of itself. We worry ourselves to death, and then we can't enjoy anything. So this is a real question of, if we want to be spiritual aspirants, we have to really think about what are our priorities in life? What is our perspective on life? What is important? What things do we simply accept as they come? we have to do a little bit of planning. We have to do the minimum. A little bit of planning, the minimum of trying to remain healthy. But no matter how healthy this body is, it's going to die one day. I often think of how many people spend their whole life trying to lose weight, overweight people, whole life trying to lose weight. And then the final illness comes and you say they died, their skin and bones. Yeah? Towards the end of their life, their skin and bones. Whole life they were praying, oh, if only I could lose weight. How nice I'll look in my bathing suit and the beach and everything. And then look what happens at the end. Not that we shouldn't, we don't want to get fat. We want to be sensible, but anyhow, we have to think. We have to analyze and look at our priorities, look at our experiences from the past. How some of the things that we looked forward the most turned out to be disappointments. Some of the things that we wanted, we found out that not getting them was better. Well, we have to learn from all of these things so that we really can change our way of living in the world. This is, see what Thakur says. He says that a true devotee of God, so if we want to be genuine, does not care for such things as wealth or health. He thinks, why should I practice spiritual austerities for creature comforts, money or name and fame? Of course, this is really a low class. Anybody who will go to a sadhu and ask for these things or do meditation for these things. But even why should we care for these things? These are all impermanent. They last only a day or two. The visiting gentleman took leave of the master after saluting him. Now, there were other people here. Sometimes we'll see that Thakur is speaking very strongly about renunciation. And in front of people who he knows are not the least bit interested in it. Weeding them out. They'll get up and leave after a while. Say, nice to meet you, sir. So the visiting gentleman took leave of the master after saluting him. When they had departed, Sri Ramakrishna smiled and said to him, you can never make a thief listen to religion. All laugh. Well, what do you think of Narendra? This was one of Thakur's favorite questions. He would very often ask, what do you think of me? And what do you think of Narendra? If they like Narendra, they say, oh, he's a good person. He likes Narendra. Yeah, this is Swami Vivekananda. But he wanted to see, because not everyone liked Narendra. He came off as arrogant. Some people thought, he doesn't care for anybody. He's the first time that Sharat met him, Swami Sharananda met him. Who is this guy? He's just standing in the corner and whistling, singing a song to himself, not paying any attention to anybody else. Later, he found out, oh, this is that Narendra. And then when they got to talk, and said, now I see that, why Thakur loved him so much and everything. They became, of course, great friends. These direct disciples, they had this special friendship, real friendship, not just a relationship or anything, but really a real brotherhood. They really loved each other. So many people misunderstood Narendra. They thought that he doesn't care for people, is arrogant. It's interesting. What impressed Thakur about Narendra when he first met him? Yeah, his clothes weren't exactly pressed or clean, or he's just indifferent. Seemed to be indifferent to his appearance and everything like that. Not bohemian lifestyle. He led a good life. But,
he was very unkempt, and one time.
Yeah, that's not what bohemian. Bohemian means that drinking and running around and also doing. Yeah, Girish goes, but that was a bohemian. Yeah, no, Swamiji was never like that. I heard something by the Sadguru. He was saying that how Swamiji went around asking people, "Have you seen God?" Very arrogantly, just to show that you don't know this, you don't know that. Such a wrong impression. Swamiji was so sincere. He really wanted to find somebody who could say, "Yes, I've seen God." He was really so genuine and sincere, even at that age, just as a teenage boy and everything. So it's very easy to misunderstand and for others. So Thakur, this was how he could judge somebody's insight into character and ability to judge somebody's spirituality. Either he would ask, "What do you think of me?" or he would ask, "What do you think of Narendra?" Other questions also, but these two. M. He is splendid. Master, yes. His intelligent. Thakur loved to praise him. And Narendra Swamiji, he couldn't bear it. So many times Thakur would praise him, he'd get up and leave the room. Or Thakur would start feeding him and he would say, "No, feed my friends also." He would get embarrassed. Thakur just lavished praise and attention on him. Yes, his intelligence is as great as his learning. Besides, he is gifted in music, both as a singer and player. Then, two, he has control over his passions. He says he will never marry. Yeah, he could do anything. He was, as an athlete, he was a wrestler and a musician. He could play several different instruments. He knew horseback riding. He came from a wealthy family. They had tutors for him. He learned all of these different things. And that brilliant mind and that tremendously compassionate heart, he really was the most well-rounded person we can imagine. M. You once said that one who constantly talks of his sin really becomes a sinner. He cannot extricate himself from sin. But if a man has firm faith that he is the Son of God, then he makes rapid strides in spiritual life. This was the one thing that Thakur didn't like, especially about the Vaishnava tradition and the Christian tradition, these two. That he used to say that people were reading from that book, meant the Bible. He didn't know exactly maybe the name of it. And there was nothing but sin and sin. Pop or pop, he would say. And Vaishnava tradition, he liked it, he appreciated it. He came from the Vaishnava family, but he didn't like this idea. Whenever people would say, "Oh, but how can we make progress? We're sinners, we're the lowest of the low," and everything. Humility is one thing, but
Not serious sinners. They say lowly,
yeah.
but they don't say we are sinners.
No, one of the times he said, "I'm not a papi. I'm not a papi." Yeah. Huh? One of the Goswami, yeah. Radhika Goswami? No. Nitai. One of them. Yeah. The other thing, of course, this attitude of the lowest of the low and everything. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sinner, not so much that they've done horrible things, but just that they're nobody and they're nothing. Yeah.
Did he say about coffee? He said
No, no. No. We're talking about his followers now. Yeah. Chaitanya Deva, I don't know. We don't know. We don't have his words recorded the way Thakur's words were recorded. So it's hard to say exactly. But and yes, Shukladi is standing up for the Vaishnavas. She's a Goswami herself, so it's understandable. No, Thakur had so much respect for the Goswamis. When they would come, he would with folded hands and really he showed tremendous respect to them. So this is M speaking, but if a man has firm faith that he is the Son of God, then he makes rapid strides in spiritual life. Master, yes, faith. What tremendous faith. This is Vishwas, this is Vishwasa. Thakur, we have two words, Shraddha and Vishwasa. Shraddha, Thakur didn't use this term quite as much. This Vishwasa means conviction. Not faith that I don't understand it, but somebody told me it's true, so I'll believe it. Not that type of belief, but conviction that yes, 100% convinced that this is the goal of life. Not 100% convinced that I am Brahman or anything like that, but that this is the spiritual path that I want to follow. This is the goal of life. That type of conviction. It can also be, of course, that God will hear our prayers, that the mother will look after us. That also type of conviction can be there. So, Master, yes, faith. What tremendous faith Krishna Kishore had. He used to say, I've spoken the name of God once, that is enough. How can I remain a sinner? This was the attitude also of the Shaktas, all of these different songs of Durga, Durga. But if you repeat the name, of course, the Vaishnava tradition is the same. You repeat the name of God at the final moment, you'll get liberation. But yeah, Thakur also would say very often, yeah, take that attitude that I may have done bad things in the past, but I won't do it again, and take the name of God, and this I shouldn't think of myself as impure. Really, what is if we think of ourselves as impure, that means we've identified with the mind. If we identify with the Atman, we're perfectly pure. Now, we don't want to say I'm perfectly pure as the Atman and go around doing all sorts of things. We have to be consistent also. But this was something that Swamiji learned from Thakur. He also couldn't bear this idea of, said the greatest sin is calling oneself a sinner. Yes, faith. What tremendous faith Krishna Kishore had. He used to say, I've spoken the name of God once. That is enough. How can I remain a sinner? I have become pure and stainless. One day, Haladhari said, even a Jamila had to perform austerities to gratify God. Can one receive the grace of God without austerities? What will one gain by speaking the name of Narayana only once? This is a story from the Puranas, of course. This Jamila wasn't a spiritual person. He did all sorts of things, but at the moment of death, he called his son. His son's name was Narayana. So without thinking that he's calling on God, by calling on his son, he's uttering the name of God, Narayana. So according to Puranas, he got his liberation. Now, Thakur also, he said perhaps he did spiritual practices in his previous lifetime also, because he tried to explain it in another way. But so Krishna Kishore, at these remarks, Krishna Kishore's anger knew no bounds. The next time he came to this garden to pick flowers, he wouldn't even look at Haladhari. Haladhari's father was a great devotee. At bathing time, he would stand waist deep in the water and meditate on God, uttering the sacred mantra. Then the tears would flow from his eyes. This, of course, is a tradition. Those who repeat the Gayatri, very often, if possible, they would do that. They would go sometimes waist deep or chest deep in Ganga, facing the sun, and repeat the Gayatri that way, 3 times a day. One day, a holy man came to the bathing place on the Ganges at Aryadaha. We talked about seeing him. Haladhari said, what shall we gain by seeing the body of a man, a mere cage made of the 5 elements? Krishna Kishore heard about it and said, what? Did Haladhari ask what would be gained by visiting a holy man? By repeating the name of Krishna or Rama, a man transforms his physical body into a spiritual body. To such a man, everything is the embodiment of spirit. To him, Krishna is the embodiment of spirit, and the sacred abode is the embodiment of spirit. Chinmoy Nam, Chinmoy Dham. This Chinmoy Sham also. Thakur used to repeat this sometimes. That we also say in our different hymns, Chinmayam, Komalangam. We talk about Sri Ramakrishna that way. But it's a question of faith and reverence and everything, that a holy person, we don't even look upon his body as the ordinary human body. He also said, Krishna Kishore, a man who utters the name of Krishna or Rama even once reaps the result of 100 sandhyas. This is sandhya, is the ritual that's connected with the Gayatri mantra, those who take the sacred thread. And I don't know everything that's involved, but there's certain rituals and things that go along with it. Otherwise, you can just repeat the mantra. Thakur used to say this Sandhya, as we grow spiritually, we drop off a lot of the rituals and just repeat Gayatri. Then, as we go a little and deeper, we give that up also and just repeat Om. Sandhya. So, yeah, this is that type of faith. Whatever we get from doing long austerities and the spiritual practices, those who have that type of faith in the name of God, they'll feel that everything can be achieved by the name of God, especially the moment of death. People have tremendous faith in that. If they see somebody die, relative dies, and at the last moment they repeat the holy name, then they'll feel great consolation that they'll have their liberation. Gandhiji, huh? Ram, he repeated the name of Ram at the last moment. Here it is. One of his sons chanted the name of Rama on his deathbed. Krishna Kishore said, he has nothing to worry about. He has chanted the name of Rama. But now and then he wept. After all, it was the death of his own son. Nothing whatsoever is achieved by the performance of worship, japa, and devotions without faith. Isn't that so? So we can't do these things just mechanically. We have to have some conviction that the goal of life is attainable, and it can be attained by following the means that we've been taught, especially if we take initiation and we're given instructions, that we have to have tremendous faith in especially in the mantra that we're given. That's tremendously important. If we feel that, yeah, I've been given this mantra, I could have repeated it before, that I could do something else some other time, then it won't have that same tremendous power that it can have for us. If we have to really, we feel that receiving this mantra is the greatest gift in spiritual life, and that repeating that is the most important spiritual practice, and that somehow it works its magic. We don't know how it does it exactly, but this process of purification and transformation takes place through the repetition of this mantra. It can be, of course, any name of God, but in our tradition especially, is receiving from the lips of the Guru the sacred mantra, and letting that be the pillar that we hold on to in spiritual life. Thakur uses that illustration that if we hold on to a pillar, we can spin around, we won't fall. So the mantra is like that. So the holy name of God. So we have to have that conviction. Otherwise, just doing things mechanically, it'll yield some result, but not so much. Thakur is very strong. Nothing whatsoever is achieved by the performance of worship, japa, and devotions without faith. Isn't that so? Holy Mother is a little softer. You repeat the mantra even without concentration or faith, it'll have some effect, of course. But how much more if we have that deep conviction? M. Yes, sir, that is true. Now he's talking to M, so he wants M to have this real tremendous faith. M was a skeptic in the beginning. He was not a cynic, but a skeptic. A cynic is somebody who just dismisses everything. Skeptic is someone who will question things, because he had such a strong background, educational background in Western thought, and for Western philosophy and history and science and everything, and had so much contact with the Brahmo tradition, and just was part of that wave, that young Bengal in Kolkata at that time, that was so influenced by Western thought. But sometimes we wonder, can people really change? Huh? We ask this question with some scholars. Somebody's a little skeptic, they'll remain a skeptic. M is a good example of radical change, because his faith in Thakur became unshakable. It didn't take long, within a year probably, huh? That it just became unshakable. So sometimes we see that this really radical transformation does take place. Yes, sir, that is true, Master. I see people come into the Ganges to bathe. They talk their heads off about everything under the sun. The widowed aunt says, without me, they cannot perform the Durga Puja. I have to look after even the smallest detail. Again, I have to supervise everything when there is a marriage festival in the family, even the bed of the bride and groom. M. Why should we blame them? How else will they pass the time? M feels a little bad because probably he's thinking his own family members and everything. And so many people, good people, but they don't take these things very seriously. Master with a smile. Some people have their shrine room in their attics. The women arrange the offerings and flowers and make the sandal paste. But while doing so, they never say a word about God. The burden of the conversation is, what shall we cook today? I couldn't get good vegetables in the market. That curry was delicious yesterday. That boy is my cousin. Hello there. Have you that job still? Don't ask me how I am. My hurry is no more. Just fancy, they talk of such things in the shrine room at the time of worship. M. Yes, sir, it is so in the majority of cases. M is not anxious to join in on the criticism here. He feels a little bad for these people, I think. As you say, can one who has passionate yearning for God continue formal worship and devotions for long? Now, what about us? We may not have passionate devotion, but in our order, we see these great sadhus that still will attend the arati, they'll attend puja and all of that. There's a joy in that also. It's not done ritualistically at all. This formal worship, when we say formal, we shouldn't think mechanical. Formal worship means that we do it according to different rules that we follow and the mantras and everything, but it can lead to great devotion also. If we really feel that when we're making the food offering, we're really offering the Thakur and Ma and Swamiji that they're there that accept our offering. If we do it with that attitude, it's a tremendous thing. So when he's talking about formal worship, the highly ritualistic things that we don't really think about the significance of too much, that of course will drop off. But otherwise, a little bit of puja, a little formal puja is very nice, very helpful. And otherwise, how do we pass our days? We can't spend all day long in meditation. No, very few people have that power of concentration to be able to do that. So we have a little puja, we have our bhajans, we have our spiritual reading, all of these other nice spiritual practices. Sri Ramakrishna and M were now conversing alone. M. Sir, if it is God himself who has become everything, then why do people have so many different feelings? These are very good questions, but also there's a little bit of some misunderstanding in it as well. And when we start out with some very high ideas, and then we go to some practical things. So I mean, if analyze this question, if it is God himself who has become everything, then how do we get these people here? And then who are the people? It'll be God himself who has so many different feelings. So there's a little bit of this misunderstanding or inconsistency. What does it mean? God himself has become everything. Then either we remain with the idea that God himself. I remember once I asked one of our very senior swamis that if Brahman alone is real, then where did this Maya come from? So he said that look at the question that you've just asked. If you're saying, suppose we say that somebody came into the room alone, and you say, okay, then where is his brother? Then how did his brother get here? Well, you can't talk about his brother. If he came alone, there's nobody else there. So if you're going to say that Brahman alone exists, you can't ask about Maya. So I was thinking about it and said, okay, well, it sounds interesting, this is an idea. And then he made a very interesting comment. And also that this Maya, you get knowledge that disappears. So you don't have to ask where it came from, because if it disappears, and do they satisfy us intellectually? half suffice. So then he said to me, "See what a nice idea this is." And then it struck me that yeah, it's just an idea. Do we? How true is it? This is our human understanding of something that we can't really understand. It's such a nice idea, he said. It was very. It struck me very strongly. I was only 24 years old, something like that. And just because I was beating my head against the wall, how to understand this? Brahman alone exists, then how does this universe come? The Maya isn't real. How does it work and everything? And then all of just like that, he eliminated everything. That yeah, what a brilliant idea that somebody came up with to try to explain it this way, and not that this is exactly. It's not like the engine of a car or something. You know exactly how the piston works and the turning the key and all of that. This is just superimposing some ideas on this reality to help us try to understand it in our own way. That's all. So, but this is an interesting question. And if God Himself has become everything, then why is there so much suffering? How is it possible that God forgets Himself? God is all knowing. So did God come under the power of His own Maya? All of these questions will come up. If we take it very seriously and say, yes, there's a logical flaw in that, I'll throw all this Vedanta out the window, then we're just losing everything. We're we're misunderstanding that every philosophy has a flaw. Everyone, none of them can claim to uh, be 100% logical and infallible, because they're all different points of view, ways of looking at it. What does Thakur say? He gives a beautiful example. Everybody thinks that their watch keeps the right time. Now, what is the right time? What is the proper time? The position of the sun. If it's directly above, then it's midday. The position of the sun has nothing to do with my ability to devise a device that will enable me to say now it's exactly 12 or 12:01 or something. Whenever it's in the middle of the sun, it's noon. That's all. Regardless of my ability to be able to say when it does it and how it does it, and uh, to come up with some device that will tell me exactly when it is, won't do it. That's why you see some of these places. I remember one was in somewhere in Gujarat where they had, and also right in Delhi, right on that Janpat, is it? Yeah, you see all of these things that they have with the astrological things where the shadow will come and everything. And what do they call them? These dials, these sundials and everything. That's the most accurate thing. That's the most accurate thing. We know that where Thakur said, when there's no shadow, then it's midday. Yeah. So it's got nothing to do with the watch. Who has the best watch, the most accurate watch? So he says that the sun alone is the real. We have to adjust our watch with the sun. So it's the same thing with these philosophical ideas that what Brahman is, that's all. It is what it is. What the ghee tastes like. Ghee tastes like ghee. We can't explain it in any other way. So anyhow, this is his question. If it is God Himself who has become everything, then why do people have so many different feelings? If God has become all different things and all different minds and everything, then there'll be all different feelings. Anyhow, Master, undoubtedly, God exists in all beings as the all-pervading spirit, but the manifestations of His power are different in different beings. This is why Thakur would always react when people say that there should be the same power within all beings. He would say, no, how can you say that? Vidyasagar said that, others used to say that one person with one arm can fight off a dozen people, and another person can't do anything. So the essence of everyone is the same, the pure consciousness, but Shakti is different. The Shakti, everyone will have a different capacity, physical, mental, intellectual, artistic. That'll all depend on so many other factors, samskaras, and uh, or upbringing and culture, so many different things. In some places, there is a manifestation of the power of knowledge. Now, he doesn't say why. These are all impossible questions. Uh, we can take it back to the previous birth, but then still, we run into a dead end with everything in philosophy. We run into a dead end. That's why they say religion begins where philosophy ends, something like that. Huh? Yeah. So anyhow, Thakur is explaining. Undoubtedly, God exists in all beings as the all-pervading spirit, but the manifestations of his power are different in different beings. In some places, there is a manifestation of the power of knowledge, in others of the power of ignorance. In some places, there is a greater manifestation of power than in others. Don't you see that among human beings, there are cheats and gamblers, to say nothing of men who are like tigers? I think of them as the cheat god, the tiger god. And with a smile, we should salute them from a distance. If we go near the tiger god and embrace him, he may devour us. Now he's quoting Thakur, of course. He says, salute from a distance. Yeah, that means that we have to be sensible people. God dwells within somebody, but we know that that person is not good for us, bad influence for us. We get angry with that person, or that person always trying to draw us out and go and enjoy things that we're not interested in anymore. So we keep a little distance, that's all. We don't have to judge them. We don't have to look down upon them. We can just say, no, my mind is weak and tender. I know it's easily affected by the company that I keep, and better for me to stay away. That's all. Master, he and his power, and Brahman and its power. Nothing else exists but this. In a hymn to Rama, Narada said, O Rama, you are Shiva and Sita is Bhagavati. You are Brahma and Sita is Brahmani. You are Indra and Sita is Indrani. You are Narayana and Sita is Lakshmi. O Rama, you are the symbol of all that is masculine and Sita of all that is feminine. This is easier for us to understand. If we deny Shakti, say Brahman alone, everything is Brahman, and yet through Maya, which we don't know what it means exactly, through Maya, there's one Brahman, one reality, appears to be many. How do we explain it? And if we just say, well, it's some ignorance, then how does Brahman fall under the influence of ignorance? It's very difficult. If we accept Shakti, we may say it's a compromise. Okay, Brahman is not homogeneous. Brahman now possesses something. A little bit of a compromise. The Advaitins don't like to do that. But it allows us to understand how Brahman can be the source of this universe also. If someone is sleeping, then how do we explain how the dream comes about? What causes a dream? Somebody's sleeping, they can't decide to dream. Huh? Something has to cause it. So that the Advaitins will say this is Maya. Somehow the Maya causes this infinite reality to become many, to break out into a dream and then enter into the dream and everything. But what's the stuff of the dream? There has to be, yeah, subconscious mind for the individual. So even from that point of view, this Brahman has to have some type of cosmic mind. There has to be something which not only Shakti, we can say, explains this the projected universe, but what explains the way it is. There has to be some type of storehouse, cosmic mind. These some of the Vedantas say this is the Veda. The Veda is that storehouse. Otherwise, we can just say that just as an individual has everything stored up in this unconscious mind, and from that the dream comes. So the same thing with the Brahman. When this universe comes, it doesn't come out of nothing. And when it's projected, then everything has a certain independence. That's how we get in trouble. That's how we can explain that this pride comes and desire comes, and then we do things we shouldn't do and everything. But otherwise, everything is all mysterious. why and how things happen. M. Sir, what is the spirit form of God like? I don't know what we'll put it under. Maybe Chinmay. This Chinmay Rup, maybe. Sri Ramakrishna reflected a moment and said softly, "Shall I tell you what it is like? It is like water. One understands all this through spiritual discipline." Now, I like this idea of water. That if we look at all of the times that Thakur is asked, "What is a Brahman like?" that 99% of the time he'll say, "What Brahman is cannot be described. It can't be uttered by the tongue. What Brahman is, everything else can be described by Brahman." This is almost the only time that he gives us a little clue. He says, like water. Now, if we look at all of the illustrations that Thakur uses with water, what do we find out? Water is very interesting. It's not solid, and yet it can become solid. It has no form of its own, so it's formless, but it always comes in a form. It always seeks its lowest level. It has lots of qualities to it. It may be tasteless, it may be colorless, and all of those things, but it has all of these other qualities. So if we say that Brahman is formless, water is also formless. It has no form of its own. You can't pick it up and move it or anything like that. But whatever container it's in, it takes the shape of that container. So Thakur uses this illustration. We take something out of, we use a pitcher, it takes the form of the pitcher. That pitcher is the human heart. God enters into the heart, it takes that particular form. So there's one idea about form and formlessness. And then water is nourishing, and it's always trying to seek its lowest point. So the Brahman is trying to fill the heart. All the illustrations that Thakur has, that we have the reservoir and there's the floodgate and we have to dig the canal, then we lift it, and automatically it goes down. We don't have to bring it. So the Brahman this is that idea of grace also. Hi, Bhakti. Okay, good. Yeah. So when he says like water, we think of all the different qualities and characteristics of water. It's the same thing with light. With sometimes we identify Brahman with the sun, light of the sun, and we think the light of the sun is invisible. The light is invisible, right? But it contains within it all of the colors of the rainbow, of the spectrum, contains within it. We put it through the prism, and we see all of the other colors. That has to be contained within this colorless light. So the formless reality contains form within it. This nirguna contains the saguna. The Shakti is part of it. This is the explanation that Thakur likes best. I won't say that this is the final word, and we can't understand reality in a different way, but this is what he's talking about with this idea of saguna, nirguna, and Brahman and Shakti and everything. One understands all this through spiritual discipline. Then he says, believe in the form of God. It is only after attaining Brahmajnana that one sees non-duality, the oneness of Brahman and its Shakti. So we may have a conviction about it, we may understand it, but now he's talking about the realization that we have to have some experience, some direct realization before we'll know the truth of these things. The oneness of Brahman and its Shakti. That means that this power doesn't have any separate existence, and that Brahman is not simply nirguna, is nirguna and saguna, both. And Brahman and Shakti are identical, like fire and its power to burn. When a man thinks of fire, he must also think of its power to burn. Again, when he thinks of the power to burn, he must also think of fire. Further, Brahman and Shakti are like milk and its whiteness, water and its wetness. So the substance and attribute, these two things, uh, they come together. There's nothing in this world that doesn't have shape and form and color, texture, all of these other things. And there's no color or anything like that can exist uh, independent of any object, of any substance. Substance and attribute, they go together. We can't separate them. Mentally, we can do it, but in terms of objects, we never come across anything that's just a color. uh, Even the sky, it's the color of the sky. And we never come across anything that doesn't have its own shape and form and color. Everything does. So this is the illustration they use for Brahman and Shakti. But there's a state beyond even Brahmajnana. Okay, this would be our vijnana state. After jnana comes vijnana. He who is aware of knowledge is also aware of ignorance. The sage, Vasishtha, was stricken with grief at the death of his 100 sons. Asked by Lakshmana why a man of knowledge should grieve for such a reason, Rama said, "Brother, go beyond both knowledge and ignorance. He who has knowledge has ignorance also. If a thorn has entered your foot, get another thorn, and with its help take out the first, then throw away the second also." Now, what does this mean? We can think of this in so many different ways. I sometimes think of these two thorns as in terms of the three gunas, that now they're filled with rajas and tamas and everything. And how do we remove these things? We have to use sattva. But sattva is also part of Maya. We have to transcend that as well. So once we've done that, we've used that thorn to remove the other thorn. Then we throw them both away. If we throw away this thorn of knowledge first, then we're stuck. We can't do anything. Some people they think, "Oh, how do I go beyond sattva?" It is such a silly thing, silly idea. We have to become sattvic people first. We have to develop all of these sattvic qualities. Then, why do we have to go beyond the sattva? Because there's also a subtle sense of I, that I'm a good person, I'm a kind person, I'm an intelligent person, I'm a wise person. The little sense of little bit of this ego is there that we have to go beyond it also. So that means throwing away that second, the thorn which we've used to transcend the others, to take out the other. If a thorn has entered your foot, get another thorn, and with its help, take out the first, then throw away the second also. M. Should one throw away both knowledge and ignorance? Master. Yes, that is why one should acquire vijnana. So throwing away knowledge. Again, we don't need to have this speculative philosophical knowledge when we've really had that experience. Thakur, you always gave that example. So long we've been talking about Shivanath and all of the good qualities, this and that. Now he came here. Now we simply enjoy his company. We don't have to think about any of these things. You see, he who is aware of light is also aware of darkness. He who is aware of happiness is also aware of suffering. He who is aware of virtue is also aware of vice. He who is aware of good is also aware of evil. He who is aware of holiness is also aware of unholiness. He who is aware of I is also aware of you. So these pairs of opposites. We want to transcend these things and realize that ultimate reality, which is beyond any of these, the relative things. This is the dvandvas, they're called. Dvandvatita. We want to go beyond that, because as soon as we think that something is good, then the mind comes this idea something is bad, that we think that everything in relative terms. What is vijnana? It is knowing God in a special way. The awareness and conviction that fire exists in wood is the jnana, knowledge. But to cook rice on that fire, eat the rice, and get nourishment from it is vijnana. To know by one's inner experience that God exists is jnana. But to talk to him, now this is where we get into the very mystical side of things. Very often we give a highly philosophical understanding of vijnana. Now we see everything a manifestation of Brahman. Thakur has a very highly personal way of looking at it also. For the bhakta, now one talks to God. But to talk to him, to enjoy him as child, as friend, as master, as beloved, is vijnana. The realization that God alone has become the universe and all living beings is vijnana. That's for the jnani. For the bhakta, it's this other thing that the personal God becomes real, 100% real. The Divine Mother was so real for Sri Ramakrishna. We give philosophical interpretations of it. Yes, this is the mind creating the water to form a block of ice. He gives those teachings and everything. But the bottom line for him was, no, she talks to me. How can I deny the existence of the Divine Mother? She supplies the words that I use to, we can, if we want, we can come up with our own theories about this, but this was his conviction. According to one school of thought, God cannot be seen. Who sees whom? This will be the Jnanis, the Advaitins. Is God outside you that you can see him? Because the seer can never be seen. The subject can never be objectified. This is one of the tenets of Advaita Vedanta. One sees only oneself. Having once entered the black waters of the ocean, the ship does not come back, and so cannot describe what it has experienced. M. It is true, sir. As you say, having climbed to the top of the monument, one becomes unaware of what is below: horses and carriages, men and women, houses, shops, and offices, and so on. Master, I don't go to the Kali temple nowadays. Why exactly, we don't know. This idea of giving up maybe ritual and things. Is that an offense? At one time, Narendra used to say, what? He still goes to the Kali temple. M. Every day you are in a new state of mind. How can you ever offend God? Master, someone said to Sen, we don't know which Sen this is, about Hridoy. He is very ill. Please bring 2 pieces of cloth and a couple of shirts for him. We will send them to his village. Sen offered only 2 rupees. How do you explain that? He has so much money, and yet he is so miserly. What do you say to that? M. Those who seek God cannot behave that way. I mean, those whose goal is the attainment of knowledge. Master, God alone is the reality, and all else is unreal. And that brings us to the end of that day. We'll start with September 22nd, 1883, next time, page 288. Close. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanugham Bhatudha Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidya Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. We wish everyone a very, very happy New Year. We're going to show live streaming tonight our program that begins at 11 with the reading from the Great Master about the Kalpatoru Day. That goes from 11 to about 11:20. Then, if you want to check out, you can check out because it's just silent meditation. And then at midnight, if you want to check back in, we'll do Arati at midnight and welcome in the new year that way. And so we send our prayers and best wishes for everyone that it'll be a good new year. Thank you.